Did you know that Italy is taxing and tracking privately held gold? And are you like us and wondering how far will it be until in the future the US does the same? We start tonight with a story that sounds like science fiction, but is in fact happening not in some faraway authoritarian state, but in one of the most original democracies in the world. I'm talking again, of course, about Italy. The Italian government, facing budget shortfalls, is now weighing a policy that would require private citizens to report their own gold to the government and pay a tax to certify its value. Yes, you heard that right. Italy, the country of wine, pasta, and the Renaissance, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, is considering a one-off levy on private gold holdings. And one-off is never one-off. That's gold that you might own, jewelry, bullion, collectible coins. And right now, you keep it tucked away in a jewelry box or a safe at home. And Italy has as much as 5,000 metric tons of gold of its own, just in private hands, worth roughly 500 billion euro or more. Now, let's make this real. Let's meet Mark. Mark is 35. He is an electrician from Ohio. Hardworking, prudent, responsible. Mark doesn't gamble his future on stocks or crypto. Nope, he stacks gold and silver right now. Mark owns about 10 ounces of gold bullion, worth about $52,000 at the current market levels, and owns 500 ounces of silver rounds, worth roughly $44,000, assuming the about $88 in current market pricing. That means Mark's total precious metal stash is about $96,000. If the U.S. adopted the Italian policy tomorrow, Mark would face a one-off levy of 12.5% on the value of these holdings if he wants to formalize them in the government system. And so let's do the math. Gold, 12.5%, $52,000. That's about a $6,500 instantaneous drain on Mark's stack. Silver, same 12.5%, roughly $44,000. $5,500 drain gone. So the total immediate hit to Mark's stack is about $12,000. And for a man like Mark, a guy who works hard, plans ahead, and is stacking metal as an insurance against inflation and market chaos, that's not pocket change. That's more than $10,000 taken off the top of his prudent savings extracted by the government for simply being careful. And here's the kicker. Italy, and by extension, if the U.S. copied it, says pay the 12.5% now or face punitive rates later. That means if Mark hesitates, misses the deadline, or refuses, the government could tack a higher tax rate on, meaning Mark could lose significantly more of his savings and more of his stack than just the 12.5%. And that's what this policy is really about. It's about control, not revenue. And so now listen, that's Italy. But tonight, let's ask, what if that happened here in the US, in a place like Ohio? What if Washington said all gold, coins, bullion, and jewelry must be reported to the IRS? We're going to bring it into the formal economy, and you are going to pay a special tax to legitimize what you already own. Would Americans stand for it? Would they tolerate the IRS demanding that they report what's in their safe? For some like Mark, it's not hypothetical, it's real money, and it's real principle. Gold and silver are more than investments. They're insurance against inflation, against government overreach, against the collapse of paper money. And now, imagine the government says, we want our cut, and now. First, it's not just a tax, it's a register system designed to give the government knowledge of what you have. Once they know what Mark has, gold and silver worth roughly $96,000, they now control what Mark can do with it. Second, once Mark and his stack are on the books, his metals can be taxed again later. Every time he sells, every time it changes hands. Transparency equals vulnerability. And make no mistake, while Italy calls this voluntary, quote unquote, opt in by paying a 12% levy, that structure is coercive. If Mark doesn't comply, he'll pay more later. That's not voluntary, that's coercion. Ask yourself this. Do Americans want this precedent in the U.S.? Because if Washington copies Italy, Mark is the canary in the coal mine. Every ounce of gold or silver in private hands becomes fair game. Now, defenders frame this as transparency and formalization. They talk about lowering punitive tax rates for early compliance. That's the carrot. But the stick is far bigger. The principle of government intrusion into private wealth. And for someone like Mark, who stacks prudently to protect his family, that's chilling. So the takeaway tonight isn't Italy, it's principle. If the U.S. ever adopts a one-off levy on private holdings, gold, silver, or beyond, Mark's precious metal stash, worth $96,000, would instantaneously be reduced nearly $12,000. And with it, a piece of his financial security, let alone compounding. Mark didn't gamble, Mark didn't speculate, Mark saved, Mark stacked, and yet, under this model, he'd pay. This is what we need to ask ourselves. Do we want to live in a country where prudent Americans pay a tax simply for being careful? Where private wealth is treated as government property until proven otherwise? For Mark, and millions of Americans just like him, that's the question of the day. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. As always, take care of yourselves and each other, and build that stack!